What's going on, everybody? My name is Behrad. Welcome to my channel, and this is episode 5 of our 1JZ S13 SWAP series. So if you guys have been following along with the series, then you know that we are just about ready to start slapping the rest of the engine parts together and throw this thing in the car. So basically, guys, today is time to put the clutch on and put our transmission together, and we're going to be using all the sweet adapter plate, flywheel, clutch, transmission setup, everything that I got from Drift HQ and PMC, who have been way more than helpful in me getting these parts and getting the JZ ready for our 240 over here. Look at her looking all pretty over there, all naked. So one thing about the adapter kit that they send you is, all right, first off, let's just talk about quality, because quality is top notch on this stuff. So let's kind of take a look. If you guys watched the video where I unboxed all this stuff, you kind of saw some of it, but if you didn't, go check it out. But check this out. So here is our adapter plate right here. This is made by PMC right there. PMC is a European company, and they manufacture like swap kit parts and things like that, a lot of Euro stuff. And of course, they make this adapter plate to mate a 1JZ engine with a ZF BMW transmission. So if you guys have been following along, you know that I'm running a BMW M3 5-speed transmission. This is our flywheel. This is a flywheel that I've never seen before, like, you know, flywheels that look like this, but it's pretty dope. So it's all kind of machined, like billet or whatever. You'll notice that there's actually a pilot bearing inside the flywheel, which is pretty cool. Now let's get over to the hardware. Pretty much everything on my little paper towel here comes with the adapter kit. So this is all hardware for the adapter plate itself, the flywheel, and your pressure plate and clutch setup. So all of these bolts, minus a few of them that we'll talk about, are gonna be to mate all of this onto our engine. So first, take a look at the quality of the hardware. It's all very nice, good quality hardware, all nice bolts. We got Allens, we got hex heads. There's a couple little pieces I'll talk about here. So these two are 2 dowel pins that are gonna go into the bell housing to help us line up the trans. This here is a crank extender, and I'll tell you guys what that's for. This is our pilot, pivot ball for the transmission. And then the rest of it is pretty much just, you know, bolts and stuff, hardware. So this stuff I bought separately, does not come with this kit, but this is our fork for the trans, this is our slave, this is our throwout bearing, and the clip for all that, for the pivot ball and stuff. And then over here we have our 5-puck clutch disc. This is also made by PMC. And down here, this is our pressure plate. This is made by Sach Performance. So these plus these and the hardware minus this stuff all comes in one kit from Drift HQ. They are super helpful in telling you exactly what you need with what trains you have for, you know, for it to all work. The reason that we're making this video is because all of this fancy stuff, all the hardware, all the fancy stuff, doesn't actually come with any instructions. So look at the amount of hardware that we have and the pieces that we have, and there's no instructions about how this is supposed to go together. Now, I guess if you do a little bit of digging, or if you contact PMC, you can get some instructions, you know, but they don't send it with any of the stuff, which is kind of weird, but it's whatever. So I've done some research. I figured out everything that I need, where everything goes, all the bolts, how it all goes together and all that. So that's what this video is gonna be about. I am going to teach you, if you're doing a JZ swap with a ZF trans and you have this adapter set up, I'm gonna teach you how this all goes together and how you're gonna mate it up to your engine. Once we're done, the engine's ready to go in. I don't know if I'm gonna do it in this video, but that's one day closer. One other thing, guys, if you have not hit subscribe, please go down below, hit the subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. And as you guys know, I'm trying to grow the channel. We've hit 2,000 subscribers now. We're over 2,000 subscribers, but I want 5,000, I want 10,000. So make sure you guys go and hit subscribe, like the videos, leave comments, do all the good stuff. And let's Let's get this channel popping, man. Let's get growing. All right, guys, so the very first thing that we did, I did this off camera, but I replaced my rear main seal. So if you guys are ever doing a clutch job, transmission job, anytime you get access to this rear main seal, it's a good idea to replace it because it's kind of a pain to get back to it. So the first thing we're gonna do is this piece right here. This here, I mentioned, is a crank extender, and it literally does just that. So this is our crank right here. And because we're adapting such a big flywheel and the clutch setup and everything, what we need to do is extend this little lip of the crank a little bit further so we could stack more stuff on it. And that's what this piece here does. So all you're gonna do is go ahead and just, notice obviously it's got like the smaller end. You're gonna put the smaller end in here, get yourself a mallet or a dead blow like this, and we can go ahead and tap her in. If you buy this setup and you turn your flywheel over, sometimes you'll see that black extender already pressed in here, and then your flywheel will just press on. Mine wasn't like that, and I thought it might be easier to just hammer it into the crank first, then I can just put this on over it. So again, if you bought this kit and you're missing this piece, check the back of your flywheel because it might already be pressed in here. All right, now that this is done, we can go ahead and put our actual adapter plate on. Okay, when you go to put the adapter plate on, you're gonna notice that there are a couple of dowel pins in the engine side already. So there's one right here and one right here, and those will line up with your adapter plate. When you go to line this thing up, you're gonna notice that it's immediately hitting this hard line right here. This is a coolant line that runs from the oil filter housing around the block to the turbo. It's like connected everywhere. And the thing is, you can't really bolt this up with it in the way. And some people go ahead and delete this entire thing. I didn't want to do that. Again, if you watched one of my other videos on this swap series, I'd talk about whether or not we're going to delete this. And so what we're going to do, instead of deleting it, because there's more to it than that, I'm going to try to bend it up and out of the way a little bit to make room for the adapter plate. Now, some people will take this adapter plate and they'll actually file this side of it down a little bit so that it'll fit. Guys, this adapter plate setup with the clutch is like $1,500. I am not gonna grind down this beautiful piece of machined, I don't know, whatever. It's just too nice. I don't wanna do that. So we're gonna unbolt the little brackets. There's one bolt here and one bolt on the other side. We're gonna unbolt those, and we should be able to kind of lift this and shove it out of the way a little bit, just enough to get this adapter plate onto our dowel pins, and then we can go ahead and put the bolts on. All right, guys, so I wish there was a more elegant way to bend this up, but I pretty much just had to use the dead blow and kind of keep hitting it right here to give it a little bit of an arch. Okay, should fit now. Kind of gotta lift it up. There we go. All right, for the adapter plate, we are going to use these bolts right here. You'll notice there's 5 of these kind of thicker ones, and there's 2 of these a little bit smaller ones. So the 5 thick ones are gonna go all around the top and the sides of the adapter plate, and these 2 smaller ones are for the bottom. All right, guys, here's a closer look at what I did. So again, all we did was give this just enough of a bend to be able to fit the adapter plate. But otherwise, fits amazing. No fitment issues whatsoever. Our dowel pin right here and the other one right here lined everything up perfectly. Here's our 5 big bolts, boom. And here's our 2 little bolts at the bottom, boom, boom. So I got all those nice and tight. All right, guys, so this is the next piece that we're gonna go ahead and put on. This is a spacer that comes on the engine already when I took the auto trans off. So this is actually right behind the auto flex plate, which we're also putting back on, because you can use the auto flex plate with this adapter kit and the flywheel so that your starter can still run off of this, which is pretty cool. But we need to run this spacer. So the auto trans, when you take it off, it actually comes with another little spacer as well. So how it normally works is you have this spacer that goes here, lined up with your holes on the crank. You have your auto flex plate, which goes on with the welds facing out towards the transmission, towards us. So we'll slip this on as well. Once you put this on, the stock auto trans then has this that goes over the top. But you actually don't need this with the PMC Adapter Kit. It actually tells you on Drift HQ's website that you only need the spacer that goes behind the flex plate. You don't need the spacer that goes on top of the flex plate. Once your auto flex plate is on, we are ready for the flywheel. As for the hardware for the flywheel, so these Allens come with 8 washers, so we're gonna use these for the flywheel. All right, here's our beautiful flywheel. I'm so excited to put this on. All right, so we are going to line up the holes right there. All right guys, with the flywheel on, we just need to bolt it up with our Allens now. They are size 8, and we're gonna give it a little bit of blue Loctite just for safe measure. All right guys, so the flywheel bolts are gonna get torqued to 63 foot-pounds. We're gonna start with 30 foot-pounds. Because tightening the flywheel is gonna spin the whole crank, we actually need to stop that from happening. So one trick that I always do is, check this out, I put a socket just kind of wedged in from either your, if it's a different engine flywheel or your auto flex plate, and it's just kind of wedged up into the back of the, housing of the or the back of the engine. And this should hold it. I don't know how you guys do it. If you have better suggestions, let me know. I don't really have a second person here to hold the crank bolt from the front or anything, so this is my method. Let's see if it holds up. All right, so now we're gonna set this thing to 63 foot-pounds for the last torque. All right guys, so we're ready to put the clutch disc on. There's only a couple of problems. Number one, it doesn't actually tell you which side of the clutch disc is the flywheel side and which side is like the pressure plate side. A lot of clutches will usually have like a sticker or something, maybe it's engraved and it'll say flywheel side. This doesn't have that. However, it does have a part number on here, if you could see it. And the part number starts with FW, so that kind of makes me think flywheel side. Now, here's the second problem. They don't send you a clutch alignment tool, and all the clutch alignment tools that I have are Nissan or I think Subaru ones, and so none of these work. So I'm gonna try to see if I can maybe make it work with just a little extension, and it should hold it on there enough for me to get the pressure plate on, so we'll try it. But anyway, so just keep that in mind if you buy this kit. The clutch disc is really nice. This thing is actually made by PMC, and it's rated for almost 600 foot-pounds of torque, which is a lot. We're gonna be making less than half that power, so this thing's great. These are the Allen bolts for the pressure plate. They're the smallest Allen bolts in there, so you'll know, and there's only 6 of them. So we're gonna put a little bit of blue Loctite on here, and these are gonna get torqued to 18 foot-pounds. Here is our pressure plate. This is made by Sach's Performance. It's part of this whole kit. You can also buy it separately. You can also buy the clutch disc separately, but they also sell it as a full kit, which is nice. So if you notice, there are 1, 2, 3 huge dowel pins on the flywheel, so it's pretty easy to line this thing up. So we're gonna go ahead . I'm just gonna put one in right now just to kind of hold it together, and then I'll Loctite the other ones and come back and do this one. All right, so these are a size 6 Allen. All right, we're gonna start with our torque wrench at 10 foot-pounds and we're gonna end at 18 foot-pounds. Man, this is such a beautiful piece. Look at this, dude. The freaking clutch setup is on. The adapter plate's on. That looks wild, man. Look at this flywheel. This is so cool. Finally seeing the clutch and the adapter plate on is a huge win. And when I get the trans all bolted up and everything, I'm gonna be pumped. Oh, what's up, dude? Did you come to inspect my work? Cool. What do you think of the clutch setup, Winston? You think I did a good job installing everything? I think he approves, guys. All right, buddy, we're gonna get back to work. You wanna help me put the transmission on? I'm by myself. All right, let's do it, dude. So what we're gonna do now is go ahead and put on our slave cylinder, our fork, throwout bearing, the pivot ball. Yeah, so we'll put that stuff on, then the trans is ready to get bolted up. All right, guys, we're gonna start with putting on our brand new slave cylinder. This is from Bimmerworld. I actually bought a bunch of stuff off of Bimmerworld, so make sure you guys hit them up if you need any BMW parts. I got the fork from Bimmerworld, the slave, the brand new throwout bearing is from them, brand new clip is from them, all the parts to refresh the trans was from them, so thank you, Bimmerworld. All right, so the slave cylinder is pretty straightforward. There's two studs that come out of the trans here, so we're just gonna go ahead and slide it on, just like that. And then my trans didn't have the hardware, but I just two nuts. I don't know exactly what size, but they're just metric nuts. All right, there we go. All right, next is the little pivot ball right here. So Nissan guys, you guys are familiar with this. It's kind of different on Nissans, but same idea. This is just a little ball for the fork to kind of pivot on. So in here, this is gonna kind of go like this, and it allows this to do the pivoting action around the ball. Now, of course, this needs to stay in place and whatnot, so there is a clip. And I bought a new one again off of Bimmerworld. Always want to replace stuff like this. It's only like $4 for a clip. This is gonna go like so. Bam. Okay, then you grab your fork, and this kind of just slides over the top like this, but you want your ball on the inside, so you kind of just gotta get it in there like that. And just take a look at how that sits in there. For you Nissan guys, if you're like me and you're not a BMW guy, this is obviously a little bit different, but that's how that spring setup works. Bam, holds it in place real well. Now, if you notice, this actually has threads on the backside, and that's because if you look inside the transmission, this hole right here is where this is gonna go into, but nothing would hold it in place, so you need a little bolt from the back. This bolt doesn't come with the kit. I had it in my assortment of nuts and bolts. Guys, if you don't have like a jar or like a box or whatever of just assortments of hardware, get yourself hardware, because the nuts for the slave, that's all stuff that I just had at home, and if you don't have that, you're gonna have to like go to the store all the time, and it just makes everything take longer. So all right, now before we put this on though, we also need our throwout bearing. Now again, if you're not a BMW guy, this is kind of different, but the throwout bearing basically just kind of slides over the top just like this. There's nothing that holds it in necessarily, but it's gonna stay in, and you'll kind of see. But we're gonna just go like this. You'll get the end of your pivot ball in through that hole. Oh no! All right, we're good. Like so. And now notice on the fork, the shaft, the hydraulic, little shaft for the slave cylinder is on one end, and then on this side, the pivot ball is on this end. Now we're gonna take our little bolt with a washer on it, and I'm gonna thread that in from the back side of our pivot ball. All right, guys, so next is these two little dowels that I showed you guys earlier. Now, you could put these into the adapter plate side, but there's like multiple holes that they fit into, so it's easier to just put it into your transmission because there's only 2 spots where it fits. So we got one right here, and we got one right here. That's it. So now the transmission is ready to get mated to our engine. So, trans is on, no issues. Looks like our clutch was just slightly off. So again, guys, if you do not have the clutch alignment tool for a BMW clutch and trans setup, and you're doing this, because again, remember, they don't send it to you. So if you don't have one, definitely go get one. I went ahead and put all of the bolts in that we're gonna be using, and I put them in where they're supposed to go, and then we're gonna come in a little closer and I'm gonna show you guys exactly which ones they are for which spot. All right, guys, so let's start with the 4 top bolts. So starting with the far right, I'm gonna take it out so you can see it. So there's 2 of these, and they are these 2 top bolts right here. Moving on to the middle trans bolt, this is pretty much kind of right up the center. This one is gonna be one of the Allens. Let me show it to you guys. The shorter of the 2 thicker ones. So here's the shorter one, and we're gonna put this here. To the left of it is another Allen, and this is also the other short one. So these 2 are identical, and these 2 are identical. These 2 longer, thick Allen bolts, these ones are for our starter, and the starter is gonna get bolted from the back to the front. Now, with the JZ, guys, the starter is a little interesting. So this here is a 2JZ starter, and what you need to do with them is drill out the holes that are previously threaded so that you could run these bolts because they're different thread pitch. So I just went ahead right now and I drilled these holes out a little bit bigger, got rid of the existing threads in the starter. And again, this is a 2J, NA 2J starter. It's not the original 1J starter that came with this. So this is gonna go ahead and go in here like this. And then I'm gonna feed the bolts in. One up top, one on the bottom. There we go. All right, now back on the right side of the trans, this is the downpipe here. This bolt right here is actually our last style Allen. There's 2 of them right here, and these are the only 2 that aren't threaded all the way. We only need to use one of them, and it's gonna go into one of our holes that had the dowel. So if you remember, we put a dowel in the transmission here. It already went into here, but you need a super long bolt for it to actually catch any threads, and that's where one of these Allens comes in. Back to the left side of the trans, this is where we use 2 out of the 4 of these skinny Allens right here. One goes right here, and one goes at the bottom of the trans down here. All right, guys, so that is all the bolts. Got these ones tightened down, went around, tightened everything else down. So just to kind of reiterate one more time, on the left side of the trans, we have the 2 skinny Allens. Up here, we have the 2 thicker, but the shorter of the thicker Allens. The 2 longer of the thicker Allens are our starter bolts. Over here, we have the 2 hex heads that have a little bit of like a non-threaded part right here. Those are those guys. Moving down here, we have the long, super long Allen that has the really long non-threaded part, and that goes through our bottom right side dowel. The last 2 bolts, guys, are actually not necessarily for the trans, they're really for the adapter plate, and they come in from the back side. So check this out. I didn't tighten them down yet, but there's one right here, and there's one directly across on the other side, right here. This one I already tightened down a little bit. So that is all of the hardware that is used for the trans, the adapter plate, the clutch, the flywheel, all of that. But let me show you the hardware that's left over. This is all the leftover hardware. We have one of the really long Allens that's not all the way threaded. We have two skinny Allens, and that's it, guys. Everything else got used. So that's pretty much it. There's no other areas where you could possibly thread in a bolt. I checked the front, I checked the back, I checked all the different holes on the adapter plate, and there's literally nothing. So that is all the bolts needed, and obviously thing is super stout. You know, there's no flex in it, there's no gaps anywhere. It all fits literally perfect, guys. So if I had to rate the PMC adapter kit and the clutch setup and everything, I would say I love the fitment. The hardware is all very nice. The machined, you know, actual adapter is super well made and looks really nice and everything. But I would say the downsides to the kit, I guess not necessarily downsides because you could work around it. Obviously we did, but there's no instructions. There's no labels for what any of the bolts are. And otherwise it was a little bit of guess and check work, a little bit of kind of checking the different lengths of the bolts and seeing where everything would thread in. All right, couple last things before we finish. So this, what we're gonna install right now is called a dual shear selector rod. This is by Garagistics. And this is a kind of an upgrade because the factory one is a single shear, which means that it only, instead of having these two plates like this, it's only one on each end. So with having both go around this joint, it kind of, you know, helps take a little bit of pressure off this joint because it's not only pulling from one side. So this gets a little pin. This is what the pin looks like. It's got a little plastic washer that goes on one side. You want to put a little bit of grease on this because you want it to be able to pivot in there and spin freely. You don't want it to seize up, which actually happened to Derek. So we're going to put a little dab of grease on here and then slide it through, and it comes with a clip on the other side. Now we're ready for the Guibo adapter. So if you remember this piece, I showed it to you guys before in another video made by Drift HQ. This is to adapt the back of a ZF trans from like the 3-bolt flange that it has to more of a 4-bolt flange. So when I get the drive shaft made, it's gonna have a flange that fits, you know, this pattern here. And this sits like that. And this also comes with some hardware. I'm not gonna bolt it up right now, only because when the guy that's gonna make my drive shaft comes to take measurements, I want him to be able to take this off if he needs to. This is pretty much the rest of our trans setup. All right. One last look. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love it. Cannot wait to put this thing in. Oh my goodness. I literally cannot begin to tell you guys how much of a relief it is to see the trans on, the entire clutch kit bolted up. Everything is ready to go for the most part to get this thing in the car. All right, guys, if you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you go down below, leave a comment, leave a like, let me know what you guys thought. Of course, this was a really big like instructional video and kind of like a review install video of this whole adapter kit and everything. So I know it's kind of boring, but if you're doing this swap or interested in doing this swap, I want this video to be very helpful and very informational. So if it was, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And the next video, it should be getting this thing into the car. So stay tuned for the next video, and I will see you guys then. Peace.